Here's interesting facts about the Punic Wars, Part 2.
Let's talk about Hannibal Hannibal Barca. Lecter. After their defeat in the First Punic War, the Carthaginians lost some land possessions, trade routes, revenue, but not their pride or a desire to get revenge. Speaking of revenge, perhaps no one wanted this dish, which
is best served cold.
More than Hannibal, who, according to the ancient historians, as a child was made by his father to promise to always wage war against Rome.
He's such a good father.
In 2018 BC, Hannibal begins to carry out his promise to his father, who is no longer alive, when he attacks a Roman allied city in Iberia, which is modern-day Spain. And after that begins his march on Rome. Oh, by the way, Hannibal means the grace of Baal, Baal being a Phoenician god, while Barca means lightning. Here's a piece of advice. If you're being attacked by someone whose name is lightning, it could be a very, very bad sign. In case of Hannibal, his ancient equivalent of Blitzkrieg was truly amazing. After the end of the First Punic War, Rome achieved supremacy in the Mediterranean Sea. As a result, Hannibal decided to march to Italy through Gaul and then, using the Alps, descend into northern Italy. Cool plan, you will say. Cool plan? That's an insane plan. When was the last time you've crossed the mountainous range on foot? I know, I've almost died trying to climb some snowy hill in Northern California. Part of the reason was because of my flat, slippery sneakers, but Hannibal and his men didn't have any sneakers. They probably had something like this. Can you imagine what it's like to try cross mountains in those?
Have good boots!
Anyway, as the next demonstration of his badassery, Hannibal decided to take some exotic pets on his trip, which were about 40 war elephants to be used in order to scare the mind of the Romans, which they probably did. I mean, at least those of them who survived, because at least some of these elephants didn't. I wonder why. Aside from some elephants, Hannibal also lost thousands of men during his crossover. But on the bright side, he made friends with some Gallic tribes who joined him in his crusade against Rome. Because what kind of self-respecting Gaul would pass an opportunity to kick the bottom of those Romans, right? Thus, with some losses, but also with some reinforcements, Mr. Barca got into Italy with around 40,000 men and quickly crushed Roman armies in two battles. The Battle of Trebia in 2018 BC and the Battle of Lake Trasimene in 2017 BC. If the Romans were not freaking out before, now they were at least quite concerned about the whole thing.
Oh my god! Okay, it's happening! Everybody stay calm!
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
Wait.
Everybody calm down!
As a result, they decided not to play around and gathered one of the largest armies in their entire history, about 80,000 men, and in summer of 2016 BC, marched this massive force towards Hannibal, who met them at a place near the village of Cannae. Hannibal arrived first to the battle site and used this factor to his advantage. He positioned his army in the relatively narrow valley, and when the Romans arrived, ordered his men into formation which resembled a half-moon, with his cavalry guarding the flanks and his infantry in the center. Because of the landscape and the massive size of their army, the Romans could only attack in a narrow and very deep formation, which they did, while their horsemen attacked their Carthaginian counterparts. Just as Hannibal anticipated, once two armies clashed in battle, it was a matter of time before the center of his army couldn't resist the pressure of Roman heavy infantry and was pushed back. Thus, the Romans were eventually pulled into the center of Hannibal's half-moon. Hannibal's cavalry comprised of Iberian and Nubian horsemen who were legendary for their skill, defeated Roman cavalry units on the flanks, and then attacked the rear of the Roman army, while the Hannibal's infantry on the flanks counterattacked Romans on their flanks. Surrounded and transformed into enormous mob of armed but relatively harmless men, at this point the Romans were doomed. By the end of that day, only about 15,000 of them were able to survive and escape, while another 10,000 were captured alive. In this single battle, the city of Rome lost about 20% of all men of military age, including dozens of senators, members of the aristocratic families, high-ranking military officers, etc. In addition, when the news of the disaster at Cannae spread, several of Roman allies in Italy pledged their loyalty to Hannibal. Finally, on top of all that, the kings of Macedonia and Syracuse also decided that it was an excellent opportunity to join Hannibal in his fight against Rome. However, if many expected the Roman Republic to either give up or collapse, they were wrong. Rome rejected Hannibal's peace terms and focused on restoring its military strength, morale, and finally, reputation. In fact, in order to raise a new army, the Romans lowered the recruitment age, recruited convicted criminals, and even slaves.